everybody, and welcome back to another episode of AV Career Masterminds. Today, we're branching out a little bit from our normal AV realm that we're used to talking about, and I'm going to let Michael introduce himself and tell us where he works and what he does.
Hey, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on today. My name is Mike Corkery. I work in the federal court system, so we're the third leg of the administration. You have the, God, I'm butchering this already, judiciary, legislative branch, and the executive branch. So we're small potatoes next to everybody else, but more recently we are diving very quickly into the AV world, specifically with AV-based networking. My headquarters is out of Philadelphia. We have 50 judges, and it kind of corresponds with around 50 courtrooms. So I've been on the job. I'm coming up on 3 years in October. And when I came in, I didn't really know much about the courtrooms themselves, but that kind of quickly became number one priority. There's a lot of legacy, faulty gear, equipment well out of cyclic refresh, just problems galore, and not to mention just many different manufacturers in play that complicated everything. So that's where I do.
As the complication is not unique to the courtrooms, it's complications in corporate America and higher ed. It's all across the board. So what's your background? Because I know in you and I talking and getting to know each other, you don't have the typical audiovisual background that a lot of us do. What is your background?
Personally, so last 3 years I stepped into a director role, which is just a lead manager over this very larger trial court. The hustle and bustle of the trial court's a little bit different than I was used to. I worked for 2 decades in the Court of Appeals, which very much so handles appellate work, and there's not as much, trials or arbitrations or mediations. Courts kind of a little more infrequent there, and they sit in 3-judge panels. So my technical background is I'm a network engineer by trade. I've been building converged networks since 2006. So when I kind of stepped into this role and realized that the AV industry itself is, it's not sunsetting legacy technology, but it's either going to be harder to acquire or more difficult to maintain. I realized that they're putting everything on the network, which is right up my alley. So I built my first iteration of voice over IP system in 2006, another one in 2009, and then another one in 2011. And then I had built a 27 site Cisco wireless LAN controller along with ICE networking for Wi-Fi across the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware area. So to me, when I had to kind of accept this challenge, I realized that it's just data, which the legacy AV people just roll their eyes at me. And I figured we would put it on the wires and figure it out as I moved along, because I had broken gear and we had antiquated technology.
Yeah. So in hearing that and understanding, like you say, the legacy AV that is moving towards everything being on the network, you have, I'm going to assume, minimal fear of that, right?
I'm the outlier here. So again, I haven't done anything audiovisual, specifically audio per se, based while I was building phone networks or building, converged networks for wireless. So that was something where I figured out that when I first went to Infocom, that many of the people were very trepid about all of this side of it. And what I've come to learn over the last 2 years is there's a couple different ways to do it. And the integrators that don't think about your organization or your architecture who usually like to come in and kind of air gap you or kind of have you living inside of those 4 walls there. And that's all well and good, but based on me having 40 plus courtrooms in Philadelphia, I really wanted to be able to manage every IP node from anywhere in the world per se, right? So, my guys have kind of really stepped up their game with what we're doing as far as building, and I want to kind of get back more into a support model where, we have more telework instead of less. And, light bulbs finally starting to go on that if you can't manage it from home, you have to be here. So, we're starting to hit this tipping point where, we're getting towards 1,500 IP devices in 2 years. And I think when we're kind of done this refresh in Philly, it's around 5,000 we'll end up having. So we're going to start to settle in a little bit here. But to answer your question, yes, I figured that I'd be able to figure out as we move along. I knew enough about multicast. I didn't know much about the audio and did not think that the audio was going to be an issue for us. It ultimately has been once or twice. But no, I am the anomaly on that side as far as what I've seen so far.
Well, and that probably brings a lot of knowledge then to your team that's underneath you, right? So just to kind of let everybody listening and watching know, you and I have had very in-depth kind of conversations about your team, their knowledge, what you're doing, what you're able to do. And so being that it is a federal and a governmental job, people stay in their positions for a long time.
A very long time.
I'm going to assume some of those, and across the country, I'm not just saying even with you, I'm saying, across the country in any type of federal, state, or local, that there are lots of employees that are, as like in higher ed, they're tenured and they're there. So trying to get knowledge with them, what's that like?
I could speak a little bit about that in two different ways. I think that the job I ended up stepping into was more unique than the traditional, kind of government employee that may have started when they were 18, 19, 20. They're doing 30 plus years, takes you into your mid 50s. Prior management here was a little bit different, and there was a lot of things that the tech group was not allowed to do. So being an AV, specialist here in the past actually really meant that you needed to understand how to operate the system, how to turn it on, how to do a bunch of basic troubleshooting. And then we very much so had a decent budget, and they really leaned on the integrators. So, you'd have integrators coming in from either Utah or down south or wherever. And what I can say here is that there wasn't a whole lot of encouragement to get in lockstep with that and understand how the builds work and how all the parts work. And that's something that we started to work on from day one when I got here. I saw a lot of broken rooms. I saw a lot of broken gear. And I kind of had to change the messaging a little bit that I'm not really concerned about what year it was put in, who put it in, who do you call for support on it. Because once it's in our building, it's our gear and it belongs to us. And we need to be able to at least try to get things back up and running outside of a Band-Aid capacity and understand, is this a Band-Aid or is it a long-term fix? That really, really helped us to kind of do an assessment on the age and the problems. And again, it was very much so room to room was different. So I wanted to move into a standardization concept where we can learn as we go. Elsewhere, where if you have somebody that could be in their early 50s and over 30 years, smaller shops per se, you may have had to do a lot more hands-on through your career. So it is a little bit different here, but it's probably a little bit different everywhere, to be honest with you. We do have some people that have been here a while. Actually had a lunch with a manager in a different department the other day. He's been here 38 years, and I'm not to believe he's quite 55 yet. So, what I'm trying to do is not necessarily look at our place of work as, a government career, because I don't know if that's taboo in certain aspects. And what I like to do is actually use it as a springboard for learning and stepping into new projects and learning new technologies. So that's kind of how we're rebranding my IT department over the last 3 years. And I've had a series of good hires so far. We're able to go out and get 4 people. I have one of the lead principals from Amazon Web Services first cloud iteration in '09. Wow. I have another senior network engineer from Comcast in Philadelphia who just onboarded with us in February. I had an AV guy who worked on Inside Edition in Manhattan, who drove to New York City from lower South Jersey every day, 14 hours, on the road. And then I just hired another tech that came in like 90 days ago, and we're rebuilding here and everything is starting to come together. So, I think that we're attracting good people that want to learn and actually want to get challenged. And that's what's actually helping us, kind of move quicker than I thought we'd move along.
Well, and everything that you're struggling with, and I use that loosely, meaning I'm sure it's across the country. You guys are struggling with this. It's very similar to higher ed, maybe 10 years ago. Higher ed was in that case where the integrators were coming in, they were doing the job, they were recommending what they wanted, and then they left because higher ed potentially didn't have the additional funding to have the service calls. You can't have a class down. Professor teaches the class can't be down. In your case, you can't have a courtroom down. It's not like you're shuffling and able to take everybody from this courtroom. Oh, sorry, we need to move you. You can't do that. So what you're going through is just like what higher ed community has gone through. Now, what I do know that's a little bit different, which I think this is kind of where what also sparked my interest to have you on too, is because you are going to be hiring, and what you're looking for is you don't have a pool of, as we call them in higher ed, student workers. You don't have the ability to pool somebody. So you're potentially going to have a couple positions open. And what are you looking for? Like what's is there an age range? Is there a background knowledge? What are you looking for? Or are you just wanting somebody that wants to learn and is willing to learn?
Yeah, I can start with the latter there. Yeah, that definitely is playing a role. And before we end up posting for these roles, I'm going to try to figure out where we want to steer towards a little bit stronger. But as a whole, I do run the entire IT department. So we do other things outside AV as well. Device deployment, application support, whatever the run of the gamut is on the regular tech side. And when I started, there happened to be this very large imaginary fence right down the middle that you either worked on courtroom tech side, which is the AV side, or you worked on the IT side. And, the messaging is starting to click, right? So our new network engineer is very much so working with the courtroom tech guys because he picked up where I left off, bringing in the multicast traffic, managing it, all that type of stuff. I think what we're really going to look for is somebody that can kind of be multifaceted and potentially work across departments so that fence stays down, that I've already knocked it down. And what I like to do is, we like to get our resumes in, take a look at who looks good on paper, maybe kind of informally reference check them from a distance. And then during the first interview, we really talk about what we perceive the role to be and what it could look like again, maybe in 24, 36 months too, right? Because I know how much work we have ahead of us. It's not, nobody really kind of comes on our team, sits around wondering what's their day-to-day going to look like. More so they want to know, if this is something that I don't necessarily care for, what else is available in a couple of years? And we have more work than people. So if you were coming in exclusively to work on the AV side now, or if you were going to work in IT and do like help desk support or something, we really run you through a network fundamentals class. It doesn't matter who you are. The only people I may or may not do that to is if I hired a programmer. When I say programmer, not an AV programmer, more so something for, desktop application. Because everything does hit the wire now, and we have so many devices on the production network that need to understand that you can get comfortable with the OSI model, and you understand what IP networking is and the address schemes, and just at least you understand the basics before we start to get you out in the field. So we definitely get everybody in and run them through a little bit of the fundamentals free course that I found that we like. We ran a whole team through it. We really like to put you into like a 90-day orientation where you can do some shadowing. If there's a build going on, you can understand the building, how the network kind of at least presents itself to you from, a north or south side. And we're going to kind of partner them up with people on both sides of the fence, and you'll do some support. Further down the road there, do some support with help desk, learn our inventory, learn about our products and what we're using. Because they don't want to throw the kitchen sink at anybody when they first come in, unless you have a certain amount of experience and you're ready to hit the ground running. So we are kind of targeting either entry level or mildly intermediate skill sets, where you're looking more so to figure out, can I find a home like as a career, and like you said, the fit is equally as important as the background, right? So we are rebuilding this team where we need everybody to work cohesively, and it's really shaping up very nicely. So, you could come in and you could be doing courtroom builds inside of 6 months, or you could come in and you could be building conference rooms inside of 6 months, or you could be taking help desk calls from judges on training, things of that nature. So I don't want to silo anybody. And when we do our interviews, we very much so tell them that I'm probably going to slice your job up into 3/1/3 or 3/25 percentiles. And we usually leave the last chunk open for you to grow into it. But, number one, you're going to be doing some end user support. You're going to help desk shift here and there. And then depending upon, did you come exclusively to do AV or IT, we would start to firm up some more of the responsibilities there. But then again, I always leave that last chunk available for development, because we do, after about a year working with people, I'll write up a 12-month, a 36-month, and then a 60-month IDP for them. It's loose goals to kind of keep two-way communication together, where if you got an employee or a staff member that wants to do something else, I want to make sure that I'm not holding them back and we can get them either the training or the experience that they need. So we help craft this IDPs together, and then it's just something that we are always so busy you can't get back to it. But we're carving out time on site now for people to do audit level 1, 2, 3 in the mastery. I have people going in CCNA route so they can get a better understanding of multicast. Very much so, still need to know PTP very well, Grandmaster clocking. So, if there's very pointed AV curriculum out there, or at least training on certain subjects, we can spin them in that direction as well.
So as you're looking over, a lot of questions coming up for you after that, but as you're looking over the resumes, how important is it that any of your applicants have a bachelor's degree? Is that really important? Or are you looking at certifications and experience?
No. So, we take our HR system's a little bit antiquated, and there's certain levels, which basically would translate to your pay coming in. And the old philosophy was, bachelor's, undergrad, this, that, and the other thing, master's. In my world, that doesn't matter to me. And we've been having productive conversations with HR probably for 18 months about this. So I wouldn't turn back around in a week from now and tell them, go reuse something that I used 2 years ago, because we've been having these conversations about making those types of requirements. You either have, there's preferred requirements and there's also like mandatory requirements. I don't want to lose out on anybody or things go into a trash pile if you don't have a bachelor's. I have a degree. Many people have degrees. You don't need a college degree to work in IT or AV. I really like what George and them are doing at Pace. That's a whole different conversation. Mm-hmm. But you don't need that. So we don't take points away from there. If you're somebody who was doing some type of tech support in an office environment, that equally weighs in as somebody who has an undergrad in some faction of IT that they've never touched, for me. So we have to set them up ahead of time where I can actually see all the applicants and they get through that process. But no, you definitely not for these types of roles, because, I think that you're going to learn more in the first 6 months on the job here than you would in a 4-year, any type of university that actually has a specialty too.
And that's important, because as especially as I talk, right? And that's the big focus I have with doing this podcast and talking to people, is that there's no real path for AV. We need to teach people that if they have some type of a degree in something, how you maneuver within it. But it's so hands-on. And what you're doing in Philly is going to be different, more than likely, than what the courts are doing here in Florida. I'm going to assume. There's no real standard. You're trying to put in a standard, but there's no court standard across the country, correct? Everybody can pretty much put in their courtrooms what they want?
Yeah, if you have, I don't know all the procurement regs, but you can steer towards what's going to work well for you. It's a little bit difficult up front. It's not like going out into an Amazon cart. But,
right.
We've been able to figure out how to get there so that I don't live in the twilight zone anymore. And I have just from an audio manufacturer standpoint, we've had like 4 or 5 different types of DSPs in these rooms when I first started. Some of them aren't even in business anymore. So, I was told when I started standardization is a no-no, and that's a bad word, but our guys can't be successful if I'm putting one manufacturer's gear in one and we have to spread it out every 3 or 4 rooms, to like do, equal competition. I understand the regs there, but we've been able to land on some, baked in contractual vehicles that we have that allow us to procure a little bit differently. They're like the equivalent of a BPA of some sort. But no, there's in the federal courts, there's 333 sites around the country. I don't know how many are considered trial court versus, a probation department and things of that nature.
Right.
Just say there's 150 that are trial courts. They're broken down by 11 circuits, which are broken down by districts inside of them. And I could be putting something in different in Philadelphia than my peer in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is. And we have the same jobs.
Right.
It all depends on, again, what's your comfort level, what's your internal skill sets, what are you doing with cost, right? So what we're doing is basically buying all the gear I can possibly buy until we run out of money, and we're bringing it in and creating lab work, and we're beating up on the gear, and we're doing pre-provisioning there. So basically, I don't look at gear anymore. I use a loose number, and I'm up saying how many full tech courtrooms can I get next year? Right. And it's based on what we've been buying the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm watching the price fluctuations too.
Now, are you doing, not to interrupt you, but are you doing your own installs, or are you bidding that out?
No, we peeled everything out except for programming. So when I started in October of 22, there was 2 procurements on the books from the summer. I'm not going to say what technology they were putting in or what integrators they were using. And that cost was $245,000 per courtroom, which I started to get sticker shock on. But when I looked at it, that's what everybody was paying in the country. And it's kind of the going rate. And it was almost dollar for dollar, parts to labor, right? And that's just what it is when you build a house. That's what it is when you do anything per se as a baseline. So we started looking at the 5 years worth of IT money prior to that. And it's going like this. So I knew what it was when I started. And then if I wanted to stay in that model, my people were never really going to get upskilled. And then I also was really only going to be able to do 2 rooms per year, right? Just to keeping the lights on with the rest of my expenses. And then we did that quick study, and it showed that 21 out of 40 rooms in Philadelphia, I had to present to the judges and say, they're on life support. They're not flaky. They're not faulty. They're on life support, meaning that at any given time in the middle of a jury trial, if a controller goes out, and I don't have one, or we can't bring it back to life, you can yell at us all you'd like, but you may have to pick a jury up and all the attorneys and go to another room. And they were really doing a lot of that when we started. So what we were able to do by doing the box sales and building our own is we're taking that 245 number and we cut it directly in half. So right. I'm all in for 119, 120. We have a local programmer here in the Philadelphia area. We want to work exclusively with them. They keep their cost in line with what it works inside of our guidelines. And they know that, if we're doing 4 a year, that they're going to have 4 programming jobs with us a year. And they've gotten better each one. We're on room number 8 at this point. They don't even have to come on site to do the programming anymore. They're dropping the file. We can get it on. We do a little bit of testing. We call them just to tune it. But yeah, we're doing the builds all of ourselves.
And so now let me, then if something would happen, right, in one of the rooms where, judges and attorneys are people, they're an end user. The judge is probably going to know their courtroom better than anybody else's like you, but somebody else coming in, the different attorneys coming in aren't going to be in the same one all the time. You're going to get user error. So now what happens? What's the response time in getting the courtroom back up and running if there is user error or something happens because you guys are doing it yourself?
The old model would have been you have an integrator. The integrator goes back out west. They're 3 hours away. And we're on site. So if there was an issue, we were on site anyway. And the roles and responsibilities in that type of model are we may not know how the rack was put together or what's in the rack. If it's something out in the field, we may be able to fix it. But I've talked to a lot of judges who've been here a long time. Things were not getting fixed quickly or timely, and they had to do a lot of moving. So when we started going down this pathway, I was advised not to because of warranties and, the fact that you don't have somebody that's certified, whether if it's a Vixer or whatever. But when I realized that doesn't help me after 3,000 miles away, it doesn't matter. So we're willing to ask the judges for leniency, and we kind of selected an order where, up front, we're not going to be getting our heads chewed off for small anomalies. But what that does is it allows us to be intimately familiar with the room, because we go in on like a Thursday or Friday and we rip the old rack out, the 7-foot rack, and then we rip all of the cabling out. And then the following week we'll go in and we'll use the conduit or pull strings, and we're pulling 96 Cat 6 cables from the field back into the rack. So, even from Jump Street, that, and we're starting to color code things differently. If I'm looking at a courtroom right now up here, there's 3 attorney tables. We know that there's 8 drops per table, and we're color coding coming in. So even back on the rack side, if you see green, it's attorney table 1, 2, 3. So we're making a lot of changes as we go. And it's helping apply a lot of common sense. So to kind of answer your question, it was a risk up front, but it actually becomes a benefit later, right? Because I don't need a named integrator to help me with a warranty, right? And, I get to meet all the fine people like you and all my other friends at Infocom, and I'm probably basically eliminating the middleman in many different areas. So we know what our manufacturer warranties are on our parts. We have spares of everything. And the fact that our 7-foot racks have really came down to, we put everything in a 24-inch rack, and it's like 7 pieces of 1 RU gear. Right. It's modular, and we can grab and go. If I have a codec that blows up, or if I have an assisted listening brain that blows up, or if I have a multi-viewer or a streamer that blows up, what we've incorporated over the last year is rule of thumb is, even on the IT side, if you're troubleshooting something for over 30 minutes and you think you're not going to get out of it, we're grabbing and going. So basically that would mean in the laptop world, if you got a bad entry in your registry, or if your Outlook's corrupt and it's 30 minutes, we're pulling the plug and we're re-imaging it, and we're giving them another one that we have ready. It's the same approach we're taking out in the field. We have extra monitors. And all of our gear is not value engineered at this point. It's very much so handpicked and top of the end, top line. But we're not short on parts. So 30 minutes, grab and go. If court's in session, maybe even go up there with the piece of what you think it might be ahead of time, right? So that's why I just keep buying and buying and buying gear, because we're rolling it out as quickly as, it comes in. Almost per se. But, it was something to consider, if I can inherit the risk on the networking side of it, which I was willing to do, somebody tried to convince me not to try to inherit the risk on the warranty for the installs. But again, my experience with integrators, and I don't really want to go there in this call, I'd rather have our 7 guys who put a room together laying under a table staring at something that they all can't figure out together than us being on the phone trying to explain it to somebody further away under warranty what's going on, especially if we build it ourselves. So that's why we're in a hurry up and go mode with building.
But even if you're building it yourself and installing it yourself, you're warrantying that install yourself.
We're the integrators. I mean,
you're the integrator.
The only thing we don't do is programming right now. And, I'd love to have a programmer. What we're doing now is that it's more important to have more well-rounded people and, go, because like I said, we found a company that wants to work with us. The price is pretty attractive. So I could be peeling 2 people out of this other side where we have 7 guys on the team and say, you're not doing builds anymore. I want you to focus on programming. And it might not be a good fit. So I don't do that. I play to people's strengths. And I don't have a problem paying for programming, and I actually got a good price on it. So it's something we don't worry about right now. And because we're repeat customers with them, we can call them when we have an issue too. So that kind of helps a lot with what we're doing.
Managing the courtroom is kind of like within the higher education space, managing and doing the classrooms. Now, what happens if someone decides they want this big video wall or they want something elaborate when you walk into the court, digital video wall, digital signage, any of those things? Are you guys taking that on, or is that where now you're going to say, no, we're going to leave that to an integrator?
So we had the need for digital signage in the building. That was another thing we didn't have when I started. Court scheduling, wayfinding, things of that nature. I knew it could have been done, internally, but we're just so tied up in a lot of work regularly. I didn't have resources for it. So I did outsource to an integrator last year to do digital signage. And what we ended up doing is we have to massage the files and get them out and actually make them presentable. So that was a good project, but that was something that I wanted to pay for because I didn't want us to dive into it, right?
Yes.
This type of stuff, we originally didn't think we were going to be able to afford full tech courtrooms. We thought the price was still going to be about 30 to 40% higher, even before just doing the box sales. So we originally presented an A, a B, and a C solution to the judges, and A would be audio only, which we actually use in a lot of like the magistrate courtrooms where you don't need presentation or for arraignments. And then B would be audio with evidence presentation, whether if it was AV over IP or a mixer. And then the video conferencing, we thought because of the cameras and the codec, we thought that it was going to be much more expensive there. So we didn't think we were going to build video conferencing into every room. And when I knocked that price all the way down, I said, we might as well, because then I'll just forget that, which room has it and which room doesn't until you step into it. I'm starting to add some bells and whistles in the courtrooms. We just put a confidence monitor on the floor in the room that we're building right now. So it sits outside the jury box, but that's just another like breakout. It doesn't really change much with the programming. I think I need another additional monitor like out where the gallery sits. So we don't really leave it up to the judges because what they're getting now is things they didn't think they were going to get anyway. And if they have suggestions, we're up for it, but we're presenting to them that all the technology that we're putting in is going to cover all of the needs of trial court, not 3/4 of them or not 65%. If there's something that's not working correctly, let us know. And we've already had to go back and change one of the programs for the video conferencing was backwards or something, where when the remote participant came in, the evidence wasn't flipping. So the people in the gallery were having some issues, but they wanted to do a split screen there. So we're making some modifications, but I'm really very much so trying to stay rinse, wash, and repeat. But video walls, things of that nature. We have a lot of digital signage on wheels, so we kind of manage that ourselves with a signage player per se. But trying our best to keep it all in the same ecosystem.
Yeah, and that changes, right? Because being able to do that changes your mindset internally, people you're hiring. So back to the hiring process for working in a court. I've already said you're not worried about the bachelor's degree. If they have it, great. If they have experience, amazing. I'm sure background checks come into play, correct?
They do. And I don't know
and how important is a background check? Because I know that, you don't want to see that person on paper that looks amazing. So what are like the things in someone's potential background that would be we're really sorry we can't hire you?
There's been instances where that's actually came up like during a job offer too across other departments, but I don't know how it flags because we don't do them ourselves. They actually get handed off to our neighbors, the probation department, who has access to different types of databases than just doing a regular, if you were renting a house out or something, you could do a background check on somebody. This is a little bit more intrusive. I don't know like how to explain where I think the line is there. If there's something that's maybe 20 years ago, that's misdemeanor or something, it comes back and it can be a local decision. I don't know, like felonies or drug possessions, how that all shakes out. I really don't know it, so I don't want to speak on it. Having said that, though, this is a totally different conversation. There's our court actually runs a reentry program and tries to find placement and kind of like second careers for people coming out of prison. Totally unrelated to
Interesting.
this.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
in my mind, I think that the hiring itself could be a little more lenient, but I don't have a hand in HR, and that would also
Right.
still need to jive with like the national policies. I wouldn't
Yes.
put it this way. I wouldn't deter anybody for getting involved. You see one of our postings, you think it's a good fit for you. I mean, it's what's the worst that could happen, right? I mean,
Right.
you could
Exactly.
come in, you could interview, you if that's something you're not doing quite often, could get you in a little bit better rhythm if something else pops up. If something show stops you towards the end, I think we just try to figure it out from there. But I don't know the lines there, Jennifer. So I don't know how much further I can go with that.
No, that's all right. Well, and it's a question we have to ask, right? Because it's not like you're going into corporate America. We know the things when you walk into higher education, what they check, right? Because and you're around adults, but especially if you're going into K-12, what they check, especially for me, when I go into a school working with next level or customers, like I have to be badged and go through different background checks and things. So I know what they're looking for there. So it's just an interesting, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. And the other thing I noticed when we're talking and what you're looking at as far as pricing and doing it yourself and funding, you don't have the funding, I think, that people would assume you have.
Oh, that's where it gets tricky, right? So you'll hear things on TV about billions and $1 trillion budgets and things of that nature. Let me try to answer this without dancing around it. So with the Doge thing that kicked off in January, February, I thought I had an idea of what the numbers were, and I ended up figuring out that I was way wrong. I'm not even minorly wrong. So there was something around 2.4 million government workers that work in civil service. So that would mean non-law enforcement, or maybe like non-judge, or I don't know if that counts for Congress and Senate things. But regardless, across the three agencies, like the three branches, legislative, executive, and judiciary, the judiciary had somewhere between 30 and 40,000 employees. And then legislative was similar, maybe even a little bit less. So call it like 25 to 35,000. So you start looking at those numbers and you're saying combined, those two branches have less than 100,000 employees, but we're still talking about 2.4 million civil servants. So that's in the executive branch. I don't know how that forks out, whether if it's DOD or, there was a lot of other departments that they closed in general. So a lot of that big money that I hear on the news all the time is defense money, the billions and the trillions. And our allocations for what we do come from Congress. And I'm fairly certain that in my particular court, it's based on the number of trials that you have and the number of filings.
Okay.
And there's metrics that come out of the case management department that kind of illustrate what your staffing model should be. Again, along with what you should be getting for, are you making improvements in these courtrooms other than technology? Are you doing a cyclic refresh for carpet or paint or fixing walls? So we do get two types of budgets. We get my technology budget, and then the space and facilities group gets money as well. That comes in off of a calculator, down to the penny. And, to me, I'm getting what I need, but I'm bargain shopping everything. I'm shaking every, tree that I can, while I'm still buying name brand, high quality stuff. But we're more financially aware that I don't have a lot of money in the big picture, and it's really only going to get worse. So we're doing what we can. That's why I said, keep buying bulk gear, because if I can get it out, in less than 24 months, it's not really going to sit there and collect dust or get antiquated, right? So there could be concerns in the next year or two about, is my money getting ticked down 10% or 12%? So I want to sit around and have projects to work on instead of wondering if I'm going to be able to buy new gear.
Mike, I thank you for joining me and talking about this and letting everybody know what's going on with the courts. I think it's an area that not many people are talking about, because we just assume, like I said, you have endless pots of money and can do whatever you want and everything's gravy, right? And I don't think many of us have been in a courtroom, knock on wood, so we don't really know unless we're trying to sell to the courts and we know what's going on.
I don't know if this will show or not, but this is a quad box up there. So we do witness, judge, floor, gallery, and then the video conference comes in on the fourth box. But, that's full AV over IP. It's pulling across 3 or 4 different switches and routers. I'm on the second floor. That's the 17th floor. So, no, we don't have endless money. We just make it work somehow.
So you've got those positions that are coming. So if anybody is listening and watching and you seem to be interested in that potential position and when it's going to launch, Michael, how can they get in touch with you?
I'm hoping I can partner with you. We don't have a recruitment and retention mechanism. So many of the hires that I've already lucked out with, I've kind of pounded the pavement on my own, created a little bit of a network, let them know things are probably coming. But what I usually do is I'll post my roles out on LinkedIn. So you can probably find me out there. I'm hoping to have one, if not both, of them up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I could put them out today. We want to sit on it another couple of weeks and figure out structure wise, where do we actually need those skills that I may have a gap in the department in right now, and maybe start to dial in the posting a little bit more towards that. So I don't want to just blindly send some things out and think about it afterwards and say I missed something.
Anybody listening or watching, reach out to me. I can get in touch with Mike. We can help you. So you can always reach out to me too.
That's great, Jennifer. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, everybody. And like we said, remember, just because it's not our typical AV thought process with it being the courts, it is something that is a need. It is something that these people working in the AV and IT portion of the courts need and want to understand the technology, need the training. And as we always say, we are all more than words on paper. And please take a listen to all my friends here on AVNation Media and all our podcasts that we have available. Thanks, everybody.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.